This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a lot to talk about today. Much has happened in the last week, and you need to know about it. We're dealing here with more than a witch hunt by Robert Mueller trying to destroy the president. It's an all-out full-court press by the corrupt media, by the corrupt Justice Department, by the corrupt FBI, which is part of the Justice Department, and we're going to be talking about a lot today. On the phone with me, co-hosting today, is my good friend Joel Gilbert. He's a conservative Hollywood filmmaker, one of the few on the conservative side. He has just produced a film called Art of the Insult. I want you all to find that, and he's frequently on Amazon, YouTube. He's a host on InfoWars. I've been on with him. He's a great guy and very, very knowledgeable. Joel, how are you?
Excellent. Good to be here, Larry. Thank you.
I want to talk about, right off the bat, how we can get rid of Robert Mueller. That's going to be the title of this show today. And the first thing I think that we can do, and we have to do this ourselves, we cannot depend on our so-called government to do it. The government, obviously, in terms of what's happening these days, is run by an Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who himself is under investigation for alleged Russian collusion, for alleged obstruction of justice, and the firing of Comey. Of course, he didn't do any of those things, but that doesn't matter because he's more of a mouse than a lion, and he's so scared that he won't do anything to either supervise the investigation of Special Counsel Robert Mueller to make sure it stays on track, actually put it on track because it hasn't stayed on track, or anything else for that matter. And underneath him is someone he had recommended to the president as Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, who's totally corrupt. I mean, the individual should actually be indicted. He participated in the illegal Steele dossier and getting grand jury warrants to be able to conduct surveillance and those kinds of things. And we don't have a Department of Justice anymore. We have a Department of Corruption. And I'm sorry to say that as a former alumnus of the Justice Department. I saw problems myself when I was at the Justice Department, politicization. That's why I left. That's why ultimately I founded Judicial Watch. I ran for the U.S. Senate, and then I started Freedom Watch, which does what Judicial Watch used to do, hard-hitting cases. Judicial Watch these days just really does freedom of information mostly. We bring the cases. But here's something where there's an overlap. And I think that this could get rid of Mueller because of the groundswell it would create. I want to get Joel's reaction to this. But months ago, I'd say about 5 months ago, we brought a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, having filed a Freedom of Information Act request for all of the communications between the Office of the Special Counsel of Robert Mueller, with his ultra-leftist compromised staff, and the media, because we saw that over the last year and a half of this witch hunt of a special counsel investigation, 1, 2, 3 times, maybe even more each day, there were grand jury leaks of what was going on in Mueller's investigation. Well, that's criminal. And we therefore filed a Freedom of Information Act request to get all the communications, the written communications, notes, emails, texts, whatever, between the special counsel's office and the media, because I'm convinced it's going to show leaking of grand jury information, which is a crime, and it will show that Mueller has committed a crime along with his staff. Well, of course, the Justice Department drags its feet on this. Mueller works under the Justice Department. Today, he's in effect the Attorney General. Jeff Sessions abdicated his responsibility. Rosenstein is covering up for Mueller. Mueller is the Attorney General, in effect, of the Justice Department. So they're dragging their heels on producing these documents. We filed a lawsuit. It went in front of federal judge in Washington, D.C., Emmett Sullivan, who when I was suing Cheney, was very quick to do things, but of course he's not so quick now. He's a Clinton appointee, and he's allowed this thing to go on. But I think he's going to start to step it up because he's one of the few Democrats actually on that court who has any degree of integrity. There aren't that many Republicans that do either, with the exception of Judge Royce Lamberth. The reality here is if we can get these documents, and I think we're close to getting them, and expose them, Mueller's going to have to resign, or there will be good cause to have him fired. Now, the president's the head of the executive branch, Joel, and our Patriot listeners. He can take this action himself. He doesn't have to rely on Mueller. So this is what we're doing, number one. Number two, we have a lawsuit to force an investigation of these illegal leaks, and that's now at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. A hack judge, Amy Berman Jackson, dismissed that case below. We took it up on appeal. We're trying to force an investigation by the Inspector General, who we filed a complaint with many, many months ago. Now, the Inspector General can also get into this issue with regard to the grand jury leaks. I'd also written to the judges that are supervising Mueller's grand jury investigations in Virginia and in Washington, D.C., and I said, you have an obligation under your oath of office to look into these criminal leaks. Do it respectfully, Your Honors. One of them is Judge Burl Howell in the District of Columbia. The other one, whose name I don't recall right now, in Virginia, we wrote to as well. No response. Now, why is that? This is the part of this Washington political club. It's the protection racket. They all protect each other. They all go to the same parties in Georgetown and elsewhere. They're all making money hand over fist. They have tremendous power if they're not making money in terms of the federal judges involved. It's a huge cabal to cover up for the beautiful people of Washington, D.C. Of course, you know, as the old expression goes, Washington is Hollywood for ugly people. You know, they're ugly not just in terms of their physical appearance there, I might add. They're not ugly, but they don't look like movie stars or anything like that, generally speaking, although I think James Comey thinks he's a movie star. But they are ugly in terms of what they do. They're evil. When I go to Washington, D.C., Joel, I just feel like there's this evil cloud hanging over it. I mean, that's why I visited a lot these days, but I don't live there anymore. I frankly hate the place. You know, I spent over 20 years there, but I go back because I'm trying to make change, and I'm there a lot. But this is what you're dealing with. And later in the show, we're going to discuss the citizens' grand jury and having me named special counsel. That's another way to break through all of this. But I want to deal right now with the criminal leaks, Joel, and I want to get your reaction to that. Criminal leaks of grand jury information by Mueller.
You know, you gave quite an overview there. There's so many connected pieces, and each connected piece is corrupt in its relation to the next piece. The ability to hopefully get the communications to the media will certainly expose another layer of corruption. The intent and practice of the special counsel's office to manipulate the media. And what this is going to show is essentially that the entire investigation, the illegal investigation and surveillance of the Trump campaign that we now know took place in 2016 into 2017 into the presidency, that included many, many illegal leaks to form the narrative, to put pressure on Trump, to try to manipulate him and manipulate public opinion, that entire program was simply transferred to the special counsel's office. Robert Mueller and his gang simply adopted and continued the illegal FBI surveillance and the program to drop information into the media to manipulate the narrative, to control Trump, to try to put get the public behind this phony idea of Trump colluding with Russia and being therefore an illegitimate president to set up the stage for a charge about something for impeachment. And I like to also take one step back whenever we discuss this stuff is to point out that, of course, the entire Mueller investigation is a cover-up. It's a cover-up. Imagine how uncreative these people are. They're investigating Trump for colluding with Russia, because if there was no investigation of Trump going on and the pressure on Trump and the media pressure, everybody would have to start looking at the Clinton campaign. It was the Clinton campaign that colluded through their foreign agent, Christopher Steele, with Russian operatives, Russian agents, to put together this phony dossier to submit it to the FBI and the FISA courts. It was Uranium One, Hillary and Mueller, who was involved in that as well, who brought a sample of uranium to Moscow. all these guys are involved with Russia, and this is the real investigation that should be going on. So I think their goal is to drag out a Trump colluded with Russia investigation as long as they possibly can to run out the clock. That's the Clinton playbook. You keep it going, run out the clock until people just get sick of it and want to move on. And then the Clintons, they say, oh, that's old news. So this is the background dynamic of what's going on, is they really want to continue this investigation to prevent themselves from being indicted because of their collusion with Russia. And Trump needs to step up and end this thing. We can see from Rudy Giuliani's interview the other day that they have a few strategies in mind. It appears they're still afraid for whatever reason. Go ahead.
Joe, let me interrupt you. We're going to talk about Giuliani because I'm glad that he's on the case, but he's made some major errors, and he's got to, put Trump first and not his own ego first. We'll get to that. But what my problem here is that with these leaks, not only is it criminal, but it's an attempt to destroy Trump and his presidency, regardless of whether there's any indictments or regardless of whether there's any kind of referral impeachment report to Congress. It's to destroy his credibility. It's to destroy his ability to do his job. Mueller is the product of the Democrat and the Republican establishments. He's worked for both. And that establishment does not like Trump, and they want him dead, figuratively and literally, and I pray for his health, because he's breaking up their gravy train and their power train, and he's a threat to them. So that's why these grand jury leaks and these leaks otherwise to the media are damaging quite a part of whatever happens with any indictments or impeachment reports. So people need to focus on that. Now, as far as Giuliani's concerned, we're going to be back and talk about citizens' grand juries and special counsels. But I also want to talk about Giuliani because he's got to put his ego aside. He's not the shining knight here. And I like Rudy Giuliani, but he's not doing the right thing right now. While we go to the next break, go to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign up to have me named special counsel. Sign up to support our cases. We need your strong moral, ethical, and financial support. We are your Justice Department. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and become a member of our Citizens Army. We'll be right back.
Dangerous.
Don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor.
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I'm back with Joel Gilbert, conservative filmmaker extraordinaire, my co-host today. I want to talk a little bit about citizens' grand juries. We're going to come back to that. But go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org. Support our cause. We have the right, according to Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, who regrettably is deceased. But in 1992, he wrote an opinion, United States versus Williams. It says the grand jury doesn't belong to any of the three branches of government. It belongs to the American people. Now, we have no choice because we don't have a Justice Department. We have a renegade outlaw special counsel who isn't investigating Clinton scandals, who isn't investigating Obama scandals, who isn't investigating intelligence surveillance outrages and violations of the Fourth Amendment by the Obama deep state to destroy Trump and everybody else, including yours truly and anybody that challenges them. So we, the people, need to rise up legally and use what we have available to us. Now, we did this in the Old South, Joel, in the Old West. I did it in the South, too, in a slightly different way. But they would commission grand juries. This was before there was a Justice Department. They would hear evidence. They would indict. They would then try before a judge, a people's judge. They would have a people's petit jury, and that's not a grand jury, but a jury that sits on the case. They would convict when appropriate. The judge would sentence, and they would mete out the punishment. And that is totally legal under our Constitution. There's nothing in our Constitution about the Department of Justice and what they do. That was legislated after the fact. And, the Congress did not do it exclusively. It didn't foreclose other means. In fact, some states use citizens' grand juries. And even in Mateo, California, you can go in front of a grand jury that's been already impaneled and present your evidence and seek an indictment. You can do that in Montana. You can do it in places of Texas. So what we're doing now federally, okay, with the federal laws which have been violated here, is that we will commission our own grand jury, and we will then take evidence. We'll invite the criminals to come. We'll invite Mueller to come. We'll see if he'll show up. You know, he's big man on campus and saying that he wants to hear from Mr. Trump. We'll let him be big man on campus and come to a citizens' grand jury. And we'll invite the Clintons. We'll invite Obama. And if they don't show up, well, we'll present our own witnesses, which we'll do in any event. We'll indict. We'll convict. We have enough to put them away for the rest of their lives. And when that happens, we will ask a judge to enforce the conviction and to order a U.S. Marshal to arrest them. And actually, we have a right as citizens to conduct citizens' arrests. Now, I'm not advocating violence. I would never do that. But if they don't submit voluntarily, if that happens and we succeed in getting convictions, and I believe that we will, it'll be a slam dunk, they'll be violating the law. And then we'll see then what needs to be done. I wouldn't advocate harming anybody, for sure. But this is our right. And this is what we need to do. And I also, in addition to these citizens' grand juries, I need to be named special counsel. So go to freedomwatchusa.org and sign that petition. We already have 23,000 signatures. I want to get President Trump's attention. Email the White House. Fax the White House. Urge that Larry Klayman be appointed because, you see, I do know what I'm doing. Okay, I have had criminal defense experience. Rudy Giuliani is a mouthpiece right now. I don't think he knows what he's doing. And we're going to talk about that next. And Joel, I know I'm using this segment because I wanted to just to tee it up. We'll get to it in the next segment. But it's so important that we have somebody in there who's fearless, and I am. I'll give my life for this. I know you would too, because our country's at stake. Our founding fathers risked their fortunes and pledged their sacred honor and their lives to found a new nation. We cannot be afraid. We can't be like Jeff Sessions. We can't bury our head in the sand. We're left defenseless right now. So not only do we need to expose the criminal grand jury leaks of Mueller, because that'll force him to leave, we need to implement citizens' grand juries and at the same time have me appointed special counsel, because I have all the powers of the Justice Department if I had that. And I would, in effect, be the Attorney General, as Mueller now is. Mueller would be gone in short order. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org, sign that petition, donate to our cause. We need to hire more people. We need more lawyers. We need everything else. You know, my former group's not run by a lawyer. That's why they do Freedom of Information Acts mostly. We are bringing the hard-hitting cases, and that is expensive. So donate to our cause. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. And we'll be right back with a longer segment here where we're going to flush out all these different issues, because it's important for the American people to understand what's going on. You don't get this kind of thing on Fox News. You know, we've got a lot of times they bring on non-lawyers. They're not that intelligent frequently. But you need to understand legally how to take Mueller out and how to bring the Clintons and Obamas to justice. We'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I want to talk now about Rudy Giuliani. You know, I know Rudy Giuliani. I got to know him when I brought a case against the Ground Zero Mosque in New York. He promised to help, but then when I asked him for help, he was nowhere to be found. I have talked to him on the phone, and I told him about the illegal surveillance. You know, many months ago, before President Trump was elected, he was very concerned. I never heard back from him. You know, to me, and I'll be honest, I like him. I like what he says. I don't think he should go on Hannity. I think he should go on some other shows and say what he needs to show. Hannity, in effect, is a propagandist, okay? I agree mostly with what he says. Brings the same people on every night. Some of them are good. I think Dershowitz is good. I think Joe DeGenev is good. But a lot of people don't really know what they're talking about. And because he is a propagandist, he's not really a reporter by his own admission. He could have a lot more credibility, Giuliani, if he was the mouthpiece of Trump, going on and being interviewed by others. So that's my advice. But he was on Hannity the other night, and he got carried away with himself. Now he thinks that he's going to be able to, spin facts, which he's not totally familiar with. In fact, the president on Friday morning said that he hoped Rudy will now get his facts straight because he created an issue with regard to the payment to Stormy Daniels the other day. He didn't need to just expose that on Hannity. And when you expose it on Hannity, your credibility is somewhat questioned anyway. But the reality here is that Giuliani has stated, and this is where I really take issue, that he's going to decide whether the president will testify or not. And he's willing to let him testify for 2 hours. Well, the president shouldn't testify at all because that's a perjury trap. Mueller has so much so-called phony evidence that he's collected that any contradiction to what anyone says will wind up in getting the president either indicted or impeached and convicted with an impeachment report. You can't allow that to happen. And he needs also to stop making statements off the cuff. I mean, he said, he'll defend Ivana Trump to the very end. It's very nice, very chivalrous, a woman, but the Jared Kushner, her husband, is disposable. Now, who says stuff like that? Now, I'm looking at Rudy, and maybe part of the problem is he doesn't look like he's in good health. And I wish him well, because I think he's a good person. But he's making a big mistake, and he's getting his ego into this thing. And I want to get your take on this, Joel, because I think it's very dangerous to have someone out there like a bull in a china shop right now. Strong actions. Talk with actions, not with words. Okay, that's the problem. We still don't have any actions from the president's lawyers. That's why he's had to fire nearly all of them except Jay Sekulow, who basically was just a mouthpiece on Hannity anyway. But Let me get your take on this, Joel.
Yeah, a lot of issues here regarding Rudy coming on. The first thing, going backwards, what you said about the fact that Trump cannot go before any kind of grand jury or talk to Mueller, and this is because he has people under indictment that are cooperating, Rick Gates, Flynn. So he's got people who want to cut deals and will probably be willing to say anything or remember something in any certain way or different way than might have actually happened that are under tremendous pressure to avoid going to prison. So you put Trump in a situation where he's asked questions that may conflict with people who've been offered deals. So the whole thing is just absurd that Rudy would even say it's even possible. So I had the same concerns you had about Rudy's appearance on Hannity. He did show a lot of ego. One interesting thing he said was, I wish I hadn't turned down the Attorney General offer, early on. Now, he started to mention what we knew, that he wanted to be Secretary of State. So that's another indication of ego. Rudy's expertise was as a lawyer and as an attorney general. There was no reason he would even be considered for Secretary of State, but that was his ego. He wanted to do something else. He wanted to show he could be this big diplomat when he had no experience or skill in that area. And he thought it was about him. So he said, no, I'm not going to take the AG. I want to be Secretary of State. And we ended up with Jeff Sessions, who's a 35-year swamp creature in Washington, D.C. So there are some indications that Rudy may not be the guy to be doing this. He has some ego. He's trying to make up for lost time. He's clearly said some things that were inappropriate. This whole thing about, dropping information on Stormy Daniels was pretty uncomfortable. So, Rudy's got to either, get it right, or Trump has to, I think, move on because this clearly had a very rocky start. I would like to see, the IG report. I think Rudy kind of exposed a strategy that they're still afraid to fire Mueller on their own. Maybe he's afraid of impeachment or what that might bring. They want to try to get Jeff Sessions. He dropped that little nutshell on Hannity. Rudy said Jeff Sessions should fire him because he hasn't come up with anything on Russia collusion. That's one little strategy. I saw today Todd Rokita, a congressman from Indiana, introduced a bill saying that Mueller has to produce the Russia collusion evidence within 30 days or shut it down. The IG report is coming out in a week or two that will be scathing. So they may be waiting for that. So we can see that.
Joel, here's the thing. Okay. One of the things that I was taught when I was a Justice Department lawyer was KISS, Keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
Keep it simple, stupid, okay? Ronald Reagan believed that complex questions, if you're going to solve them at all, could be solved simply, okay, directly. Okay, I think the president Trump's that way too. Get to the heart of it. All this stuff, I mean, and I don't mean to keep beating up on Sean Hannity, but I get frustrated, okay, because, every day it's, great hope, major story, boost ratings, you bring all these people on, this is what we learned. We bring the congressman on from Capitol Hill. We bring on Sarah Carter. We bring on everybody else. I like Sarah. I'm not knocking her, or John Solomon. But it's false hope. Now, you got to get to the crux of it. And the crux of it are the grand jury leaks. Okay, Jeff Sessions is not going to fire Robert Mueller. Jeff Sessions is afraid that he'll wind up indicted himself by Mueller if he pushes, or somebody else. Whoever Rosenstein appoints after that. He's recused himself. So we need to get that information out, and they need to be working on all of the illegal surveillance that's been going on, the illegal wiretaps of the Trump Tower, the illegal unmasking of information under Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And although NBC was a little bit off the mark yesterday in terms of saying that Michael Cohen, the president's lawyer, had been wiretapped, what they still did was also illegal under the Fourth Amendment. They got his pen register, which means all of his calls. Now, how did they get that? I mean, they're seeing whether he's calling the White House. He's a lawyer. Okay, they have no right to that. So what Giuliani should be doing is bringing a lawsuit like I've done. I've brought several lawsuits against the FBI, the intelligence agencies, and others for the illegal surveillance. I got 2 preliminary injunctions. Start fighting back legally. It's one thing to say there, Giuliani's role is not to be a propagandist like Hannity. His role is to be a lawyer. And he should be going on perhaps on Chris Wallace, on Fox News Sunday, on other shows, and saying the same thing, but not doing it on a show which, in terms of the general public, has no credibility. Now, I believe what Hannity says most of the time. Of course, he's fudged it with regard to using Michael Cohen as his lawyer and other things in the past. And frankly, I have problems with him because he ran away from Cliven Bundy. He ran away from Judge Roy Moore. He's not somebody who puts, when his interests are at stake, ahead of anybody else. He basically is more concerned with Sean Hannity. So I think that he has to be Giuliani, the lawyer here, and he should take those strong positions. And it's fine to say there's a witch hunt. It's fine to say that Comey's corrupt. It's fine to say that Comey should be investigated and indicted. But also take some action here. Yeah, and you've got to do it yourself.
Yeah. Let me jump in with a few comments. I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm also feeling what I'm feeling and other people are feeling. When you say they need to work on all these wiretaps and all these things that are going on and investigate, that's the whole point. As long as they keep this investigation going on Trump, we can't look into any of that stuff. Look what happened with the IRS scandal. They interfered in the 2012 election with the IRS. They drug it out. We're going to investigate this, and then they just kind of dropped it a year later. Everybody moved on. And that's kind of the Clinton psychological effect. You can even see it among all conservatives. I can hear it in your voice. I feel it. I see it everywhere else, where people are just sick of this. They're sick of this and kind of ready to move on. When everyone's completely sick of it, no one's going to really have the energy to go back and look into what Hillary and the FBI and DOJ did 2-3 years ago. And that's the reason the Clintons aren't in jail right now, despite this huge rap sheet. They managed to put things in the mix to drag it out for so long that people just don't want to deal with it. And I want to make one comment on Hannity. My film Dreams from My Real Father, a lot of people know me for that, where I did an expose where I showed that Obama's real father was not the Kenyan Obama. I'm going to bring us all together because my father's a goat herder from Africa. In fact, his father was a Russian agent named Frank Marshall Davis that radicalized him in his youth into this Marxist mentality, Marxist ideology. And this film was shown to Roger Ailes by a friend of mine before it even came out, to see if he would get me on Hannity and get me on some of these shows. They didn't have to agree with it, but they could have me on to show that, hey, there's this documentary that exposes that Obama's a complete fraud. And Roger Ailes watched the entire film, hour and a half, and his jaw dropped, and he told my friend, this is incredible, but we can't touch this. So So Hannity is under constraints from above, from the advertisers. Look what they did to Glenn Beck. People remember they went after his advertisers. So Hannity has some good intentions, and he is under some constraints about what he can and can't do. So I wanted to point that out because I had the same experience.
No, I agree, but I'll tell you what I was trying to make this point is that I believe most of what he says, okay? I believe it. He's not a lawyer, but I believe most of what he says, and I do believe he has good intentions, and I'm glad that he's out there. But Giuliani needs to go on and be interviewed by others because Hannity is a propagandist. That's what he is. Okay.
Well, I'm frankly afraid of Giuliani running and doing all these shows. I prefer, like you said, that he just stay at the White House, deal with Mueller, and get the job done. I don't think we need a PR person. I don't think that Rudy is the PR guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on that. So I think it was a mistake the other night. But here's the crux of it here, and this is the Achilles heel. It's not just getting rid of the Clintons. If I'm special counsel, believe me, we'll get rid of the Clintons. We'll get rid of Obama. We'll get rid of John Brennan, former CIA director, sleazy closet Muslim that he is. And we'll get rid of the other one, Clapper, who's a total liar. And, you know, it's frankly a joke. His eyes shift faster than Howdy Doody when he's asked a question. That's how dishonest he is.
That's right.
So I'll take care of that. And that's why I go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org. We'll take care of that with our citizens' grand juries. But the real Achilles heel is all this illegal surveillance. And we know just last week some text messages came out between Peter Strzok and others at the FBI where they buried an investigation of mass surveillance that I had started. And I went directly to Comey. I went there with Judge Royce Lamberth, and it just was buried because these intelligence agencies, we live not just in a deep state, we live in an Orwellian police state. And today we are under this giant sword of Damocles that if we do or say anything that offends this club in Washington, the Republican and Democrat establishments, that you can be destroyed. And that's why Sessions is fearful. They have wiretaps of him in communicating with the Trump Tower. God knows what could come out of files. So it only goes so far. So we, the people, need to rise up. We need to do it for ourselves. We need to be like the Cliven Bundys of the world and not wait for other people to do it for ourselves. But Giuliani, as the president's lawyer, needs to be his lawyer, not his propagandist right now. You don't need that. And I agree with you totally on that, Joel. So this is why I'm trying to be constructively critical here and not to knock people. But Fox News needs to go further. You pointed that out in the past, that they would never touch the birth certificate with Obama. Obama was half Muslim and doing everything he could to harm Israel and, frankly, is an anti-Semite. And anti-Christian for that matter. You know, we need to tell it like it is. That's why I like going on InfoWars with you. We tell it like it is, you know, and that's what I try to do on this show. So all of you who are listening to this radio show, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, I want you to share it with your friends, colleagues, fellow patriots. I want you to get it around. I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign our petition to have me appointed special counsel, support our citizens' grand juries, and also I want you to share the show with others. We'll be right back.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
The title of the show is How to Remove Robert Mueller. He needs to be removed immediately, legally, of course. I'm not talking about otherwise. And he needs to be sent to the ash heap of legal history. A Republican who is an establishment creature who also tries to scratch the back of the Democrats. Of course, the Republican Party, and Joel, you can weigh in on this, is less than pure. I ran as an independent Republican, a true Republican, when I ran for the Senate in Florida many years ago. But it's the same side of the coin. It's the league of corruption. You've got the National League and the American League, and Mueller is leading the charge for all of them because they want Trump gone. They want him dead, figuratively and frankly otherwise. There was a meme this week, I'm going to get it up on our website, of the former presidents sitting around or standing around, along with Hillary Clinton, a coffin at the funeral of Barbara Bush, may her soul rest in peace, with President Trump in a coffin. I think that was quite appropriate. I didn't create it. Now, Joel's done some great parodies too, satires. You can find that on our website. And Joel, tell us where you can find those as well. Because, we need to use humor a little bit here too. It's so heavy what's going on. The humor can make a point, and Joel is extremely good at that. So tell him where you can go to look at some of your productions, which are really great.
Freedom Watch USA just posted my short film from about a couple years ago called Hillary Clinton is an Ameriphobe. She suffers from Ameriphobia, and she's checked into a insane asylum, and Donald Trump is treating her at the Donald Trump Clinic for Ameriphobia. So you want to see that on the Freedom Watch Twitter and website. It's very funny. Of course, a couple years ago I made a film called There's No Place Like Utopia, which was a kind of Michael Moore-style film where I run around the country talking to people in Chicago, Detroit, Denver, Newark, all these progressive cities, and I use the analogy of the Wizard of Oz, and I talk to all these people. It's very funny and very hard-hitting as well. And one of the interesting things, again, you go to, of course, there's no place like utopia.com. You can see the trailer and buy the film there. And, of course, my new film, Trump, The Art of the Insult, very funny, 95 minutes of laughter, but you also learn really who Trump is. You understand his branding and marketing techniques, and you can understand his presidency a lot more. And that's a definite. You got to see the trailer. It's hilarious. And buy the film. It's at artoftheinsult.com. And I want to mention, Larry, is you talked about how they want Trump gone. They want Trump dead. This really exposes the establishment, never-Trumpers, Democrats, the deep state. I call it the police state. It exposes them because Trump is not it's not about Trump. It's about his agenda. It's not personal. It's because Trump represents the agenda of middle America. He represents the agenda of patriots. And so when they hate Trump and want him dead, you better believe they feel the same way about middle America. Flyover land, anywhere from Nevada all the way through Virginia, up and down, east and west. They don't want the real America, the hardworking Americans who go to church, work hard every day. Traditional America, they know, supports the free market system and supports traditional values, and that's who their enemy is. That's who Trump represents.
It's an arrogance towards the American people. I think it was Alexander Hamilton that said the people are a great beast, something to that effect. And they just view us as lesser people, almost subhuman compared to them. The beautiful people in Washington, D.C., that's what we're talking about. The people that know better, they know the better for the rest of us. And that's true, even in terms of people who we see on the various networks who we like what they're saying, is that, you look at some of these Sunday shows, they don't bring on people from public interest groups. They don't bring on people. They bring on congressmen, senators, everybody else who's scratching everybody else's back. It is so corrupt. You look around the skyline of Washington, D.C., there's never been a recession there. It's doing better than ever. Building after building, more government after more government, more arrogance after more arrogance. And sitting on top of it are people that are supposed to protect us on the federal bench who become the yes men, just like the judges of King George III, who rubber stamp everything that these Washington swamp creatures want, because if they don't, they won't get bigger jobs. So I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign the petition to have me named special counsel. Send letters, send emails, send texts, send faxes to the White House, urging the president to sit down with me at least, because he needs a different perspective, and support our citizens' grand juries, because we the people will rise up and we will wage a second American revolution. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. Joel, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
You're great. And we'll be back next week. God bless everybody. God save America under these dire times.